Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a really fascinating blueprint today, one that outlines a massive paradigm shift for rural infrastructure. We usually talk about development in terms of these grand, sweeping projects, bullet trains, massive highways. But today, we're zooming in on something way more foundational. We're looking at a structural correction that completely rethinks how rural populations actually move. It shifts away from this rigid idea of traditional transportation toward what the source material calls a living mobility organism. It's an idea that could literally change millions of lives.
Okay, let's dive right into this. For decades, we've had this silent failure in rural transport. If you ask around, the standard assumption from policymakers is almost always, well, we just need more roads or we just need more buses. But the reality? The reality is actually an absence of continuity. A village might have a bus stop. A town might have a busy bus station. The district has full connectivity. But the gap between those nodes, it's completely unspoken and unaddressed. It's not about missing pavement, guys. It's about missing connections.
And because of those missing connections, what millions of rural citizens deal with every single day isn't a functional transport system. The text captures this perfectly. This is friction disguised as infrastructure. Think about that daily reality for a second. You aren't just going from point A to point B once. You're walking the gap between your home and some distant stop. You're forced into these fragmented, disconnected transfers, constantly adjusting your schedule, essentially relying on pure chance to get to work or school or the hospital. So, to solve this friction, the text introduces Section 1, a new civic infrastructure, focusing on panchayat minibuses. The absolute core of this idea is a total mindset shift. It states very clearly, this is not charity, and it's not some temporary pilot experiment. It is basic civic infrastructure. When you turn on a tap, you expect water, right? You flip a switch, the lights come on. In that exact same way, local mobility has to become an essential, guaranteed layer of everyday life. Which brings us to the mechanics in Section 2, two mobility layers, circulation and connection. The blueprint brilliantly illustrates how these two layers come together. Remember, it's not just a fleet of metal vehicles, it's a structural organism. Step 1 is circulation, which is all about continuous, hyperlocal movement. And step 2 is connection, providing direct routes straight to larger hubs. Together, these two steps completely fix that fragmented chain we were just talking about. Let's break down exactly what that looks like on the ground.
So, 5. 5 is the magic number for that first layer, circulation. The goal is to establish continuous local movement within every 5-kilometer radius. We aren't just talking about paving a road here, we're talking about a minibus system looping continuously past all the vital arteries of a community. The local schools, markets, ration shops, primary health centers, everything inside that 5-kilometer bubble becomes instantly accessible.
And to make that circulation truly work, it has to be predictable. We're looking at local buses arriving every 15 to 30 minutes. To put that into perspective, at that frequency, the whole anxiety of waiting just vanishes. Daily movement becomes totally reliable. It stops being this abstract concept of transport and literally just becomes daily life in motion. Then we have Layer 2. While the first layer handles that local 5-kilometer radius, Layer 2 kicks in every single hour, giving villagers a direct connection out of their local cluster. We're talking hourly routes straight to district headquarters and town centers, direct access to major opportunity nodes. No forced transfers, no dependency chain, and absolutely no wondering if you're going to be left stranded halfway through your trip. So, how do you govern an organism this integrated? That brings us to Section 3, system integration and local ownership. To keep this system rooted in local reality, ownership has to stay with the local panchayat. Mobility happens right outside people's front doors, so you can't just manage it from some distant capital. The funding proposed here is a pragmatic mix, using state support and PSU credit funding to get it off the ground. Operationally, it could be run directly by the panchayat or through tightly supervised licensed cooperatives. But the real game changer? Fares are decided locally. Affordability is treated as an actual lived condition, not just some rigid number handed down by bureaucrats who don't understand the local economy. Now, what's really interesting about this breakdown is how it fits into the bigger picture. What happens to the existing state transport? Well, the panchayat minibus doesn't compete with the state system, it completes it. As the source material outlines, state transport remains the long-distance, connecting backbone, while the panchayat system acts as the continuous local spoke. It's a classic functional hub-and-spoke model that finally bridges that rural gap. Which naturally leads us to our final point, Section 4, continuity between lives and the human element.
Because at the end of the day, what does this actually mean for a person on the ground? Today, a villager has to actively negotiate distance, time, and massive uncertainty every single day just to participate in society. This model shifts that entirely. We move away from viewing transport as just infrastructure, metal and asphalt, and start viewing it as a reliable presence. Movement goes from being a daily struggle to an effortless, guaranteed reality.
I absolutely love how the text summarizes this with this quote: "Development is when movement becomes effortless enough that people stop noticing it." I mean, wow. True development isn't just pointing to a paved road. It's the invisible, completely unnoticed ease of getting to a clinic or getting to school. That is the true goal of the Panchayat mobility organism. It's establishing continuity between lives.
It's a totally different lens for viewing civic infrastructure. It treats mobility as a basic, continuous right instead of a fragmented privilege. And it leaves us with a really provocative question as we wrap up today's explainer. What other broken systems in our lives, whether in rural development, urban planning, or even digital infrastructure, could be fixed by shifting our focus from fragmentation to continuity? Think about that. Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.